Welcome back to The Farming Lawyer. I'm attorney Craig Steger, practicing in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. Today I want to talk about farm fires and more specifically barn fires, things you might want to keep in mind before a fire happens so that you're in the best shape possible, as best as you can be in the event that a fire does happen. So this morning, when we were getting the kids ready for school, we heard the sirens and the local volunteer fire department started going past our house, and my wife, as she usually does, turns on the scanner and and heard that it was a barn fire not too far from our place, and that's always a concern. Barn fires are, can be really devastating for a farm operation, especially if you're a dairy farm and it's the dairy barn. That's really huge. Even if you're able to save the cows, you got to find another place to milk cows and all that. Or, if you have like a machine shed burn and you have a lot of equipment in it, things like that. So fires are one of those things that can and do happen. And there isn't necessarily a lot you can do to prevent a fire, but there are some things that you can and should do in terms of making sure you're set up from an insurance perspective before you have a fire. Now, I'm not an insurance expert, but I deal with a lot of insurance and I deal with a lot of fire insurance claims. In fact, just this morning, I had a client in. He was a retired farmer who had a fire. He sold most of the farm and built a kind of a nice sized pole barn shop where he had like his utility tractor, his lawnmowers, motors, small engines, things like that. And he had a fire, and because his insurance agent didn't really do a very good job of making sure he had the right insurance, he had a lot of items destroyed in that fire that ultimately weren't covered, or at least the insurance company is refusing to cover. And so it was just a really good reminder to talk about insurance, because most of us don't spend a lot of time thinking about insurance, especially after kind of the initial application. After you get a policy or move to a different insurance company, you oftentimes don't do much other than pay the bill when it comes in. But there are some things I want you to be thinking about in terms of insurance, and it's really, really important. If you live in the country at all, and especially if you're a farmer, it's really important to have very open and frank conversations with your insurance agent and ask the right questions for that type of coverage. Because generally speaking, if the fire involves the house and the attached, let's say an attached garage and stuff like that, under most insurance policies, it's kind of a straightforward thing. There's usually decent coverage for that. Now, there are different kinds of coverage: fair market value versus replacement value of both the house as well as items that you want to keep an eye on. Things depreciate over time, and so if you have replacement coverage, then if you have to, like, let's say, buy a new stove for your house, even though the one you had was 10 years old, you have coverage for the amount to buy a new one, not the value of your 10-year-old stove, right? So it's really important to know to what extent you have replacement coverage, and that's true on your dwelling as well versus actual cash value, things like that. But once you start getting into buildings outside of the residence, outside of the house and garage, you have to pay a special attention to that, both in terms of the structure itself, which again, kind of that actual cash value versus the replacement cost becomes very important. Usually things get more expensive over time to rebuild and replace. And so if you built a nice shop for $100,000 10 years ago, to build the same thing now, it's probably going to cost you a lot more, maybe $150,000, maybe $200,000. And so that replacement value becomes really, really important when it comes time to rebuilding. The other thing that can be really important is what kind of coverage is available for items that are in your, let's say, your barn, in your shop, whatever. That, like I said, in terms of a house and a garage, there tends to be more coverage and easier to get full compensation or something close to full compensation for all the items in the house. But once you get outside that and you get into detached buildings, garage, barns, sheds, things like that, it becomes much more important that your insurance agent have the right coverage for you. Things such as tractors, lawnmowers, boats and motors, small engines. I would say anything with a VIN number or a serial number. Really important that your insurance agent know about those, because a lot of times those have to be separately listed on your insurance policy. Otherwise, they kind of get lumped in with kind of just general tools and outdoor items and things like that, and you can really find yourself in a spot where you don't get anything close to the value of that. So it's really important for those kinds of items, things that can, like I said, to have a serial number or a VIN number or something like that. It's really important that you ask your insurance agent about those things, so that if there is a fire, those items are properly covered. And the other thing to keep in mind is how do you keep track of what you have? It can be, if you've lived at one spot for a long time or any kind of amount of time, you accumulate things over time. And this is true both in your house as well as out in the barn or out in a machine shed, things like that. So what are some things you can do? Well, here's a really easy thing you can do. I think they say you should check the smoke, the batteries in your smoke alarms. Is it once a year or twice a year? I can never remember. But that would be a really good time to pull out your phone or video camera of some sort and just walk around your house. Walk through all the rooms and just and then video and narrate it if necessary. Everything that's in there: clothes, furniture, knickknacks, appliances, tools, anything of value. And that's, I think, especially true in your barn and machine shed, and maybe more so in your machine shed, right? You probably have toolboxes full of tools, wrenches, parts, small engines, big engines, lumber, iron, whatever the case may be. You can have a lot of stuff inside your, let's say, your machine shed or your tool shed or something like that. And it's really, really important that if a fire happens, you have the ability to kind of recreate that list. And a video is just a great way to do that. Plus, it'll just be easier for you to remember things. You can kind of like mentally walk yourself, around your shop after a fire. But if you have a video, they're like, oh, yeah, that's right. I had that one chainsaw in the corner that you forgot about or something like that. So having a video, and to do that at least once a year, maybe twice a year, and go through your buildings. Maybe if you have a nice toolbox, you pull open the drawers and just kind of, get pictures and or video of your wrenches, sockets, hand tools, things like that, saws, drills, routers, things of that nature. Things that, and that all adds up. I mean, in and of themselves, one item isn't such a deal, but if you have to replace all the tools in your toolbox, that can become expensive fast. If you have items that have, let's say, serial numbers, take a picture of that, of your tractor or lawnmower, maybe your chainsaw, whatever the case may be. Take pictures of those things and store them in a drive, maybe store them in the cloud. If you're not into that, put them on a flash drive or something and put them into like a safe or a locking deposit box or something like that. That's just a really, really good idea, because I promise you, if you go through a fire, it is one of the worst things to go through, and it becomes very, very difficult and overwhelming to go back and try and recreate what you had. And so that's something that's really helpful in advance to do that. So take some time, maybe put it on your calendar, put a reminder on your phone or whatever, once a year or whatever, and just do that. Just go around inside and outside of your buildings, inside and outside of your house. Try to document as best you can the stuff that you have, so at least you have something to work with when it comes time, if it becomes time to, try to submit an itemized list of all the things you lose. If you're a farmer or you live in the country, you have any kind of a shop, you could have way more items, way more money into the stuff outside of your house as you do inside the house. And that's where it can become really important to have those, and also to provide those to your insurance agent. Have a regular scheduled meeting with your insurance agent, if not once a year, regularly, and just go through things and make sure that you have insurance. And here's another tip. When you ask questions, it's really, really good to ask those questions in writing somehow, or to record that conversation so that there's no question later on about what you asked your insurance agent and what they told you in terms of coverage. So either send them an email, send them a letter, have it typed out, bring a copy to your meeting, keep a copy for yourself, so that there's less and less question later on about what was discussed and what the insurance agent told you. Because I see a lot of cases come through that involve fire, or generally fire of outbuildings, machine sheds, barns, things like that. And I think there's a lot of situations where insurance agents, if they're not used to dealing with those kinds of properties, farm acreages and things like that, can really unknowingly set their customers up with not the right insurance or not enough insurance. And so it's important and necessary to be kind of proactive as the farmer, as the property owner, try to make sure that you're asking the right questions, you're documenting those questions, you're documenting those answers, and then if something happens and there's any dispute about the type of insurance you have, at least you have something to work with to prove your side of the case later on. So I hope that is helpful. If you have any questions about any of that, feel free to leave a comment or send me a message. I'll be putting out in the near future some resources for people, and some of those will involve insurance checklists to help you better understand and make sure that you're asking the right questions of your insurance agent. So be sure to follow, like, and subscribe, and just stay around the channel so that I can make sure that you get access to that information coming forward. If there are questions that you have or topics that you'd like me to cover, just let me know. And if it's something I think I can answer or I can get the right information for you, I'll be happy to do an episode on that. So thank you everyone for watching. And until next time, everyone, have a good one.